Hey, I'm Charles Szczepanek. I'm a pianist, composer, arranger, music producer, and concert curator. I run a concert series in Fountain Hills, Arizona, and also music director at a church. When did I start composing? Gosh, when I was a kid. I guess composing has always been something that it's come naturally to me. And so when I would be young, I would either improvise pretty poorly at the piano when I would be practicing, or I'd take music that I was supposed to be practicing for my lessons and just mess around with it instead of actually practicing. You could kind of call that composing, so that was the beginnings of everything. That was when I was really young, 5, 6, 7 years old. So it's been a long time that I can kind of say that in quotes. But professionally, I've been composing since I was, 20 years old or so. Lately, what's drawn me to composing, back in 2012 or 13, I hadn't really done any writing since I was in college for a bachelor's and master's in piano performance. I was really just studying hard, practicing hard, not doing a whole lot of other stuff. And I put out an album of Christmas music around that time, and I hadn't done anything in so long, and I thought it was just a fun little project. And that really kind of blew up everything that I've been doing the last number of years. So that's kind of where everything started for me lately, about 2012, doing a lot of arranging and a lot of composing and going from there. My main instrument is the piano. That is almost solely what I write for. But I also play guitar and bass, and I sing. You could say I play a little drums, but yeah, piano is the main one. Where do I normally compose? This is a fun one. So this is one of the places where I normally compose. This is at home, my home piano. It's just a really relaxed place. I can just sit here and have as many cups of coffee as I want to and keep writing all day if I want to. But I also compose in my studio. And I also compose when I'm up at my church job. I compose up there. One of the cool things about having so many places to go is that each one of those places has a different instrument. And so I have my home piano, which has one sound and it inspires me in a certain way. When I go into the studio, I have sample libraries that all sound totally different. When I'm up at work, I have an upright piano and a beautiful Mason Hammond grand piano that, again, both sound totally different. And when you have different instruments to work with, you can be inspired to write in completely different ways. So what sounds really nice on one might not be the first place you'd go to find that same idea on another one. And it's also really great variety of instruments to try out ideas. So as I'm writing something, if I really like the way it sounds on one, then I can see how is this going to sound everywhere else. So it's kind of a long answer, but home is basically the primary place where I compose, but there are a lot of places where I work on the music. What's my biggest challenge when composing? 10-ish years ago, I would have said the biggest challenge would be writing more than 16 bars of meaningful music. I've always had a relatively easy time coming up with quick ideas, and I could usually get something and write it down and have it be cool, and then I'd sit with it for days and weeks, sometimes quite a long time, and I'd never be able to finish it. So that used to be a big challenge. Lately, the thing that I'm challenging myself with is how can I get my message across with writing the fewest notes that I possibly can. So if it's a piece of music that is going to require something more virtuosic, then how many arpeggios do I need to write? How many scales do I need to write? Or is just a little bit, does that suffice? And also how minimalist can it be? And still create the mood and the atmosphere and the drama if that's necessary. So that's the current challenge. How much can I get rid of and still share with the listener my musical and emotional intentions? Tell us about the Dark Waltz. Well, Jamie and Jenny and Carolee brought the Dark Waltz to me. They introduced the piece to me. It's a piece that was made famous by Haley Westenra on YouTube. I fell in love with the piece immediately when I heard it. And so this is an arrangement. It's not an original composition. My arrangement is focused on trying to keep a waltz dance-like figure, but in a way almost obscure it a little bit. And so a lot of the piano writing, especially, is I tend to hear it like it's like we're floating on clouds almost. And so whereas a traditional waltz, you'd have a big downbeat of every bar and then kind of a push off. What I've tried to do in the dark waltz is incorporate something a little different, where every bar is kind of, they all kind of blend together and we get just one fluid motion throughout the piece. So you can still feel the dance-like movement, but it's also a little bit different. Okay, what part of the song am I most proud of as a composer? You know, this arrangement of the dark waltz has it has some pretty cool writing, especially toward the end of it. There's some almost concerto-like parts for the pianist and the violinist to play, so a lot of notes, super virtuosic. They were a lot of fun to write. They're probably not as much fun to play. But I would say the part that I'm most proud of is toward the beginning of the piece, introducing, first of all, this fluid, very, very light motion in the introduction and then through the first verse. And normally, since the dark waltz is kind of strophic piece, so verses followed by refrains, the first refrain traditionally is a build upon what the first verse does. And I've done something completely opposite of that in this arrangement. And so the first verse establishes the dance motion and this lightness also, the juxtaposition of the two. But then the first time the singer says actually the word dance, the texture, the instrumental texture, goes completely almost two-dimensional. So we only get one chord per bar. Where I think a lot of people would expand the writing, I've done the opposite and made it very, very, very simple. And also kind of playing on the text and the title of the piece, The Dark Waltz, the piano goes very, very deep, very low in its register, and it creates this extreme isolation for the vocal, which is something I really love, especially for the introduction when people get to hear this, when the listener gets to hear this for the first time. There's so much focus on the text because the instruments are totally out of the way, providing this like very lush carpet of very low tones. So I'm really part of that moment, especially in the piece, just doing something that's different and unexpected, and I think is super effective for getting people to tune in right away and hear something new and different, maybe something that they weren't expecting.